It keeps flashing. I don't know what.
Where are you? Oh,
Slideshow.
here you
There we
go. Yeah, okay. Where's your, you just got a mouse? Cool.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Everybody should see that. Yep.
Okay, you know what, I'm actually gonna, we should start giving a round of applause for, so let's give a round of applause to Carl here.
I'll give one to Bob too, because I took some of his presentation.
Well, there you go, let's give a round of applause.
So
to Bob
Bob,
as well. You need a microphone?
You want the microphone? Okay,
Yes.
makes it easier.
All right. So Bob gave a presentation about a year and a half ago about mostly about
Yeah.
FM satellites, and I want to expand on that.
You might be on
because-
mute. You might be on mute. I don't know.
I think it's
Is it okay?
green light.
Yeah, but is it muted though?
Yeah, he just needs to talk closer.
Just talk closer. There you go. Okay.
So Bob gave a presentation of about a year and a half ago, it was strictly on FM satellites, and I wanted to expand that out into linears because there's a lot of excitement with linears. FM you can work, a certain crowd is on the FM and a certain crowd's on the FM, on the linears. And so we're gonna go over that whole thing tonight, hopefully.
Hey, Kyle, could you move that way a little bit, just a little bit, because now you're in the frame of the camera. Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
next.
Hey, man, you gotta find out how to do that. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, oh, they're individual items. Do you want it that way?
No, I wanted the other slide.
Oh, okay. This one? All right.
Just a disclaimer saying.
Okay, I missed that one.
And yeah, you take what you want from this presentation, ask any questions you want during the presentation or after, it doesn't matter to me. I go good with questions, so I'll just take it and run and keep going forever. I got into the satellites because I like stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that can be had with satellites, and I like to make stuff. So most of the stuff on this table I made myself to work with satellites, and I'll explain why I made the stuff as we go on the presentation. So go ahead, next slide. So if you don't know, satellites are just repeaters in the sky. There's nothing more to them than that, except there's no trees in the way, and they're only there for a certain amount of time. And you can only listen at one time on one base, one band, and then here on the other band. I apologize if I'm sounding a little confused because I just got over a serious fever last week. I had Lyme, and I'm just getting better now. So if you understand how a regular repeater works, we come in on one frequency we get like a full-size receiver, comes in, and then we pass it out through a transmitter of another pretty much the same size, but the frequencies are so close together that one has to be nulled from the other to go up on the same antenna. And to do that, we have this big gigantic duplexer, right? Not a diplexer.
Yeah,
it's a duplexer.
duplex. Yeah.
And it's a big, heavy piece of equipment. The radios are big and heavy. The power for those are big and heavy. So if you could throw all that up into space, then anybody could communicate with them and it'd be no problem. But because of rocket ships cost a lot of money to send stuff into space, satellites are wicked small. And then they strip out all that stuff. And in order to not need the duplexer, if you go up on one band, like 70 centimeters, and come down on 2 meters, you don't need a duplexer. So that's the reason for one band up and another band down is to get rid of the duplexer. And then they're usually just one frequency up and one frequency down. Then you don't need the VFO and all that stuff of the radio. So basically it's a repeater without all the stuff to go in any single frequency you want. So there'll be one frequency up and down, no duplexer, and then just a small amount of power. So they're a lot less than 10 watts. And depending on which ones they are. And sometimes they don't run all the time either because they get put up in space for many, many years. And they get charged by solar, and the battery on them is only small. So some of these satellites are basically, I don't know if I can show, but it's basically no bigger than this. So they come out of they shoot them up into space, and you spend like 20 grand, I guess, 20 to 30 grand to get a ticket to go up there, and then you spend money to build a satellite, and then it goes up there, and then they just get popped out like Pez. When the satellite's in the proper orbit, and then the ground control can send commands to them, like old radio commands with DC, what are the
ETMF.
DTMF tones, and they can control it, turn it on and off.
Yep.
But a lot of times some of the older ones are only active when they're in the sun, because that's the only time they have enough power. Right, and because the batteries are old and stuff like that. So if you just consider the satellite, the repeaters in the sky, and understand that fact, that gives you a huge advantage over not being afraid on operating them, because that's all they are. You're just going to talk up one and down on the other, and it's just like talking locally. And because we're using two different bands, the best way to do it is to have a dual band radio with full duplex. Like this is an older Yaesu, but it's completely full duplex, which means I can transmit on 70 centimeters and listen on 2 meters at the same time. And that's very has a huge advantage, because you can hear yourself, and then you know you've got the bird.
Make sure
Yeah, you can use headphones. Or these type of radios cost a lot. The current production one is the only one that's still in production. I think is a Kenwood, and it's I don't know $400 or $500. It's crazy.
E70.
Yeah, it's crazy.
74.
Or you can get two Bofangs and do it with two Bofangs. Have one on 70 centimeters and one on 2 meters, and just have the headphones hooked into one, and then you could key away on the other one. And so you can get into this for extremely cheap money, or you can get crazy. Okay, it's like,
You're on line of sight, did you use them?
oh, I kind of hit that. So yeah, they're just, because the satellites, you don't have tree issues unless you have tree issues in the yard.
Yeah.
But once you get out of the tree issues, they're about 200 miles away. So very low power is required, because nothing gets in the way. And these are basically the 5 or 6 FM birds that are up there that are still active. I don't know about the bottom two, but the ones that are in that weird color there, the 4 at the top, are ones that I have worked, and I know that are working still. I'll make a comment on the ISS one. It has a Kenwood mobile radio in it. So all the concerns about not using full power and any other kind of concerns you have like that, because if you use full power on one of the small ones, you could splatter the channel and then cause other people not to hear it, or you could cause the radio to reset on the smaller birds. But the one on the ISS is a full-size Kenwood mobile radio, and you can hit it with 50 watts if you want. Excuse me. So that's probably the best one to start on, because it works very well, and it's very low order. And yeah, it just when it's working. Sometimes you gotta check the website, because sometimes when they are docking, they turn it off. But there's no concerns about how much wattage you use when you're talking about it. Those only the first 4 are the only ones that are active. And when you're working the FM birds, because it's an FM channel, it goes up and down on one channel. So only one person has the satellite, which means it's very, very hectic. It's crazy hectic. It's so hectic that I kind of don't like it anymore. It's like you get your call sign out there in a grid square. That's all you do. And somebody comes back to you with their call sign in grid square, and you gotta try to write it down. And that's why we'll get to it in a minute. But so we'll just keep that in mind. The FM birds, one channel, very hectic. Go ahead.
Oops. Oh,
One channel,
sorry.
and QSO is a fast and frantic, this call sign and grid, yeah. Okay, now the linear birds, there's a whole bunch of them, and a lot get launched every day or every year. Those two in heavy black the bandwidth on those is 100, on the top one is 100 kilohertz. So that's, over 15 hunks of 300 hertz, 3000 hertz that you can have a full SSB conversation. And the front end of that is usually allocated for digital. So on that bird particularly, you can have a whole section of people doing FT4 and or CW. Then you have a whole bunch of people on the other end of that having conversations, not quickly, blah, 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 blah. They're like having full-on conversations. Hey, how's your day going? It's like being on 80 meters or something. Only for like 10, maximum 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
Those two birds are the highest orbit birds. So they have a huge long pass, and they're out there about, they vary, but over 1,000 miles. But those are my two favorites because of the huge band pass and the duration, and they work quite well. And I've done FT4 contacts on them.
AO7 still working?
Yeah.
Okay.
So see how the two bottom ones have the biggest bandwidth, the ones on the top there that are not highlighted, they're usually about 20 to 30 kilohertz. So you can have 5 people on there, a little less depending on it, but that's a hunk. You get a hunk just like you do on do an HF, and then you could just hold that hunk if you wanted to, and people could call up you because you stop calling CQ on those, like CQ satellite. This is KC1NAM, Foxtrot November 41, and then somebody comes back to you, and you just have a conversation, or you move on to the next person. Some people just hunt back and forth. It depends, but it's compared to the FM birds where all you're doing is passing your call sign and your grid square and then moving on because somebody else wants to get in on it. It's a lot more relaxed.
Carl, when you're on there with that bandwidth, you're basically listening in over that 100 kilohertz to find an open frequency, right?
Yeah.
Same.
Yep.
It's as if it's as if you got a narrow band radio, but it's still 100 kilohertz, so you have to listen where
Yeah, and that's where
you'll pick your
a
frequency.
waterfall radio will come in. When I'll show you the advanced gear later. Once you get tuned in, then you just start rolling back and forth, and you can see the conversations happening in that hunk of bandwidth. Sorry about that. Okay, next one. All right, so this is just a nice little example of how the linear birds work. They're all sideband, so they'll go up on lower sideband, or they could be vice versa. This example is like that. I can use this a lot, yes, this week. So we got, here's our bandwidth. And then we got all these conversations going up, and then it gets flipped around and comes back on the other side. And so that's just basically how it works.
By the way, just so you know, the remotes can't see the dot, they can't see the they can't see the laser thing. It's it's not being picked up.
Oh,
That's
if the people online have a question, then
if you're online, you have a question, you should be able to just unmute and talk to us.
okay, or they could put it in the chat and you could answer.
Or chat too, yeah.
So that shows the huge bandwidth and how it translates from upper sideband to lower sideband or vice versa. Most of them work this way. There's a few that work opposite.
Next one.
Yep. Okay, can you get rid of that thing?
Good thing.
Okay.
The top,
Question.
which one?
Chat box.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why is that on there? Oh,
Okay, so here's what I was trying to explain before. There's a guy who we invited tonight, but he didn't come into FYA. I've seen him, or I've heard him, make satellite QSOs with one bow fang and a rubber duck on the beach. But he has serious operator skill, okay? You need to be able to change frequency, talk, listen, remember the call sign, and you might not have gotten in, so then somebody else got in. So now you're gonna try to remember a different call sign, and then make the QSO, and record it, all while trying to point this at the thing, and he's just kind of thinking where it may be. He doesn't really know where it is, and I've heard him do it many times. So if you have massive skill, then all you need is a Bowfang. I don't have massive skill like that. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so I like the idea. I made an antenna once and I pointed at the sky and I heard people. I was like, that's cool. But I can do better than that because I can't do all these things at once. So this chart says, as you have less operating skill, you could build a complex station that'll offset your weak skill. And if you have tech skill, you can build a complex station that would offset your operating skill. So basically, if don't be afraid if you don't have tech skill, because if you're a good operator, you can do it with just a radio, right? Or with a an arrow antenna would definitely be a plus. But if you have huge tech skill and some deep pockets, and you're a lousy operator, then you could be on this side and have just as much fun. So it's a cool situation here where everybody and anybody can get in for any way they want to. And like, oh, what happened?
Sorry, no,
Go
sorry,
back.
that was me.
So for example, like I would put Nancy right here and she uses a 5200, which is a dual band radio on an omni antenna, right? And so she has to have some skill to operate the frequencies and change the frequencies in memory. But her antenna, she doesn't have to worry about because it's stationary, but it works. And we'll get to that in a minute.
Ready?
Yeah.
Oops, man. All right, that the one?
Okay.
Nope, all right, the next one is this one.
Okay, so the steps for a QSO, you're gonna decide what the bird to work, and there's all stuff I put in the appendix on where to find the birds that are active, and I've actually generated a frequency chart for the 4 currently active FM birds that you can just copy into your radio, and then you'd have that all set. Decide how you're gonna do your up and down. Are you gonna do one radio and just be a tough guy, or you're gonna have the dual bander, or you're gonna do 2 radios, or you're gonna have, it's best to hear yourself. I mean, the one radio is pretty hardcore, unless it's a full duplex, but it's really good to be able to hear yourself. And that in itself is kind of cool because you're like, hey, that's me. I'm coming down from the Doppler, and that's what those frequency charts I was talking about. So in 2 meters, you don't have to worry about Doppler too much. But on the 70 centimeters, there's quite a bit of shift. So you usually have 5 stations programmed, 5 channels programmed into your radio. One would be the center frequency, and then the center frequency would be number 3, and then you go up and down 2 frequencies from there. So when the satellite's approaching, you put on 1, then you try to make a contact, and then you'd have to switch it to 2, and you can kind of hear the receive starts to get scratchy or comes in and out more, then you could just turn it 1 more memory channel, and then you start hearing them again, and you could operate it that way.
But the TS2000, you could lock and trace and you can, it'll.
Well, yeah, you can do that with the 9700.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that I didn't find too easily for me to handle with manipulating that and trying to remember the call signs. And I'm like, I know I can make a computer do that for me. So then you also have to deal with the satellite. So the satellites go like in 6 to 10 minutes. So it comes up and it's going in 6 to 10 minutes. And it's going to be some kind of arc across the sky, and the appendix will show you all the different possible orbits. And then you got to track that for best success. You have to be on the satellite while it's moving, either by holding an antenna. Okay, now you're holding the antenna and you're holding the radio, and this is where the good operator's in, and tracking it and doing all that while changing the dial all at the same time. Or if you're a legend, you just hold it up up to the sky and just move your rubber ducky to get the right polarization. And you can make a contact that way, or you can make a computer do it. Then you know, you gotta have a logging solution, because unless you can remember everything, and it does get frantic sometimes on the, I mean, it is frantic on the FM birds. A lot of guys just wear a little, one of those little USB recorders around their neck and kick that off when the pass starts, and then they know they have everything recorded, or they have a record on their rig they press. I personally write a call sign down next to me when I'm in the shack, and then if I make contact with him, I circle it and put a time, and then I keep writing them down, because I can't remember stuff in my head, and I can't use the computer at the same time either, because it's wicked fast. So I'll write down a call sign, and if he fades away, then I'll scratch him out. I'll write down another one, and if I get him, I put a time in it, and then I move to the next one. And then I go back and I put them in my logging software after I've rested and stuff. Okay, next slide. I got some links in here for all the different places you can get the pass information and which birds are currently active. Go ahead. Yes,
You used to,
smartphone apps. I haven't personally used that one, but I've heard good things about it. Tells you where the ISS is, and if you're just getting started, that's probably the best one you want to work with in the beginning. And then there's all kinds of PC tools. I use G-Predict quite a bit. That can control my radio. They can control my rotors. They can control, and then it shows me all the satellites and when they're fixing to pass. So if I set a list of the satellites that I'm interested in, then I can always look down the list and say, oh, okay, this one's coming, and I can click on it, and then the rotor will go where it needs to go, and the radio will stop turning, and then all I have to do is call CQ. And if you're a Mac guy, it's Mac Doppler, but I don't know anything about it. Okay, like I was saying before, a simple to moderate station. So the simplest station is just a handheld, and you're gonna have lots of skill. And then you kind of move up to handheld with a Yagi, and then you're pointing and doing it, and you're gonna have a lot better receive and transmit with the Yagi, but you got another thing going on. There are other options besides just holding it. You could put it on a tripod like this, and if you put a counterbalance on it, then you take all the weight out of it, and you can just move it around like this, and a lot easier. And then you can have a stationary system like this, where you have a full duplex radio, and it's working up to an Omni antenna on your roof. And that'll work pretty much just fine. You just have to remember that the Omni antenna is going to have a null at the top. So if you're getting a pass that's right overhead, you're going to lose them for a little while. But if you have passes that are in this area here, it's going to work super great. And there's been many times that I was working a bird, and they didn't sound awesome like they usually do. And I'm like, huh, I thought it must be weather. And then I realized I didn't switch my Yagi, my vertical to my Yagi. So I made the whole QSO on my vertical, and it works fine. And Nancy does that all the time with the ISS, and she's had a lot of success. So it's a great way to do it.
Is Nova for Windows still out there? Is that
Nova?
Nova for Windows? There used to be an old satellite phone called Nova for Windows.
No, I don't know. I don't
I
know.
wonder if it's still, but that's what I used to use back in the day.
Was it DOS?
Nope, it's Windows. It was a Windows based one.
3-1, right?
3-1, yeah. Next slide. Okay, now here's a B station. And I'll just say that we've got a computer, we got a IC 9700, which is the best satellite rig. I don't think there's anyone better. I either have software on here controlling the controls on the radio, or I have it's an S.A.T controller, which it has a web browser that I hyperlink into, and then it controls the rotors and the radio from that. But it's a web browser, so I don't have to have a new interface all the time. And it's a tiny little piece of hardware. You'll see it at the end. So we got coax going up to the roof. On the roof here, we have our cross-polarized antenna, 70 centimeters, and then 2-meter one, and we have some preamplifiers there. Now, the preamplifiers, so if we have a long length of coax, right, even if it's LMR 400, we're gonna get a lot of loss between, depending on how long it is, but if mine's like 110 feet from the radio to the antenna, so you wanna minimize your loss, okay, because some of the birds only put out a few watts or even less than a few watts. So the preamps, they do not amplify your signal. That's something that people need to understand. They amplify the signal received from the antenna enough to compensate for any loss in the coax. So whatever signal is coming out of the antenna, you're not going to get any better than that. That's the best signal you're going to get. If you just leave it that way, you're going to lose signal by the time you get to your radio. So your preamp will just bump it up 15 to 20 decibels, so it'll overcompensate the loss you're going to receive for your coax going down to your radio. So I have one for 70 centimeters and one for 2 meters, and then my own design here. You can come up and look at it later. And that was a fun part for me because that was about 3 months of work trying to, and 3 or 4 versions of boards that I sent to China and had come back, and a lot of smoke, which is always fun. But I got my latest one is my EME one, which I'm starting to get into now, which does 21 decibels. That one there just does I think 15, which is fine for satellite, but for EME you need a lot more than that. So that was a good part. So the IC7 9700 has a feature where it turns on the preamp using a bias T. So it'll send a DC voltage up the line, 12-volt DC voltage up the line to the preamp. The preamp will have the opposite side of the voltage, the bias T on it, where it sucks the 12-volt DC out of it, but then filters it from going up to the antenna. So by using just the coax lines, you can send a 12-volt signal up to power the preamps to engage them and to disengage them, which is very cool. It's a great rig. You can also do it with sequencers and stuff like that, but it's very easy with just the rig.
Are those RF sensing or are you doing?
The preamp circuit on the IC7 9700
It cuts it out.
cuts out when you key in.
All right, so
Super
you're
cool.
not building any RF sensing into your stuff.
No,
Okay.
but I do have those there can be triggered by a bias T and or external 12 volts. So my EME one is on the sequencer. So I send up the signal when it goes on, and then when it goes off, I turn it off. Plus I link it into the IC 9700. So it's definitely going to be off so I don't fry it.
Kyle, quick question. You're saying cross-polar, circularly polarized antennas. Those look like two, one horizontal and one vertical antenna on each band. Is that correct? The
Picture
four
I stole
antenna,
from the internet.
is that your antenna or something?
No.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
have the latest one.
All right,
and I
that's
had to
fine.
get-
That's
go up
fine.
on the roof.
I have a set of
But-
circular polarized ones.
But let me talk, that's a good point. Let me talk about that. So in satellites, and when they're in orbit, they're not just going, their antenna just hanging out the back. They just go, wow, they're just going crazy all over the place. So when they transmit, their bananas are coming out all crazy like this. And with that, you'll see people working it. They'll be doing this and like, what are they doing? And what they're doing is they're matching that antenna's polarization to the polarization of the satellite in the sky. Now, you can obviously you can't do that with static antennas like that. So what they do instead is they put a vertical and horizontal together. They're spaced about a quarter wavelength apart. And when the signal goes to one, it has a special phasing line, then it hits the other one, and it kind of goes and spins it. And that creates circular polarization, and which syncs up very well with the satellites, and they work. It's the best way to work. So that this station here has two circular polarized antennas, preamps, IC 9700 and a computer controlling the Doppler and the.
Now, you're able to switch it either way.
Yeah, all you need to do now is just
Build a little
talk.
switch to switch it either way,
Yeah.
and you start hearing it.
And I think, yeah, we'll get to it in a minute. That's for like me, because I don't have operator skill. I make the computer do everything because I know how to work computers.
I've actually done satellites with just doing horizontal.
Yeah, sometimes you
Not
got,
not with that,
if you don't have circular, you can switch back and forth.
just between, and
between
I
the
did it
two.
with just my azimuth. I got a 2 meter beam that's vertical, horizontal, and I've worked satellites doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
Before there was like, oh, and then I had a 441, a short one, a little 9 element, and it worked.
yeah, no, you can do it with
You don't
just flat ones.
have the,
It's just, it works a lot better with circular
Yes.
polarized. If you have horizontally polarized or vertical, it'll still work. Then you might get some cutting in and out, or the voice will go lower or something like that, but it'll still work with a circular one. And it sounds like you're talking on the repeater. Once you get everything working and it's tracking, it's crystal clear. It's pretty cool. So the Doppler is the other thing you have to worry about with the radio. The Doppler is like a train coming down the tracks where it goes like that. The radio signal is going to do the same thing. So you have to change frequency on the approach. And then when it goes past it, you got to keep changing to go the other direction and keep up with it. And that's, that's where the operator skill comes in. You're going to program your memory in your handhelds for like 5 stations for the 70 centimeters, because as you can see there's a big change. The 2 meter is not too bad, and on FM you're not even going to notice it. It'll still be within the passband, so it'll just pick it up and it'll sound normal. But on the 70 centimeters it won't work, so you have to have 5 different presets in your memory, and then as it's approaching you're on one, and then you're 15 degrees in the sky, do the other one, then you're halfway, and do the middle one, and it's just something you got to deal with. And that is another thing I couldn't deal with, so I just made a computer do it. All right.
Okay, at the same, are we in the right place now?
Yeah, no, I'm just going fast in these slides, and I, for everybody's sake, I put a whole bunch of memory programs at the bottom of the station, so you can just copy them directly into your radio if you want to give it a try.
So
Okay, so here's one. So here's what it would look like for AO92. The RX frequency is 2 meters and it's all the same. And then as you see here, the stop ticking up for the transmit. And you have one at the start, and then like 2 minutes later, and then so you got 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So it's like 1 to up to 6 to 8 minutes is the usual pass, and you just have to. You don't like watch your clock and say, "Oh, it's 2 minutes, change it." You'll know when you start hearing it, it starts going away and fading, that you need to switch to the next channel. Okay, go ahead. All right, so if you're going to work an FM bird, you're going to know when it's going to. You can't just stop talking and hope it's going to be out there. You gotta look at all the reference material I attached at the back, find out when it's going to pass, find out where it's going to come up from, and where it's going to go, so you can have the best success of aiming your antenna at it. Okay, keep going. Yeah, have the memory channel set. Yeah. And then for the FM birds, it's just call sign and grid square. That's all that matters. So if it was me, and I'd be like KC1 NAM, Foxtrot November 41 or 42. And then I'd wait for somebody to call me back. But normally you're not actually calling, so somebody's already there. So then you just find him and you call him and his grid square, and he'll call back to you and say Roger, and that's it. And it's like a second, that's it. Next one.
Yep.
Okay, so then you keep going, you gotta change the frequencies, keep pointing at the antenna and doing all that stuff. And it's it's a challenge, and I mean, if you can operate and handle all that stuff at once, it's easy for you, I guess, but I can't do it that way. I have to leverage hardware. All right, next one, it should be the linear one, right? Yeah. Now, the linear ones are a lot more fun because there's a lot more dial playing and messing around with the radio, because you have that huge bandwidth of 20 to 100 kilohertz. And your radio is not going to be perfect and the satellite's not going to be perfect. So when you stop talking up and you know it's coming down, you might not hear yourself right. So you got to find yourself where you are in the band. So you're going to transmit up on the frequency, and because that band is so wide, you're going to start like calling CQ to yourself, like CQ satellite, KC1 and AM, and then you're going to be moving. I move the RIT, and I'll move the RIT, and then also all of a sudden I'll see myself on the waterfall, but I'll be sounding like, you know, when somebody's like, I don't know, 1,000 kilohertz off frequency, it's like all like a monster. So then I'll just start tuning the RIT and slowly, and then I'll hear myself until I sound like myself. Then I know I'm good. Then I don't touch the RIT. Then I can spin the big dial all around and find somebody else to talk to. And I know he will hear me very clearly because I just could hear myself very clearly. That's an extra step you have to do with the linear birds that you don't need to do with FM. Yeah, okay. Next.
All right,
Yeah, because that's the only thing different with the, well, on the linear birds, you can also have a conversation. So you can talk for as long as it's birds in the sky and the other guy is still available. And that's a good thing to mention. So I'm able to talk to people in Europe. I've talked to a guy in Spain quite a bit, like 2 or 3 QSOs with him, because if the satellite goes right over the Atlantic Ocean, on UHF you go bink, bink, and it's a perfect triangle. We can do DX basically to the other side of the
But it all
Of course,
depends on which way the path.
yeah, it depends on the path, and a lot of times you can get people up in Canada a lot. But that's another thing, you can't talk to the whole time to the same guy unless he's in your same grid square.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna lose his satellite pass at a different time than you're gonna. So if he's if it's somebody in like Ohio or something like that, and it's coming this way, then, and if we're Rhode Island, this is Ohio, so we're gonna have a good long period where we're the same, but eventually I'm gonna lose him and he's still gonna have some time on him.
I had a heck of a time trying to work Texas. I had a guy that wanted to set up a sked. Problem was, that was through the ISS. But the problem was the ISS was here. So therefore the pass, when it left Texas, it hit
It was
Rhode
just-
Island, so
yeah.
I never got it. So I had to wait until they pushed the ISS up.
Oh, so we had a longer
Now
radius.
now your circle is bigger. Now it was leaving Texas and hitting Rhode Island. I was able to kind of remember that, because the ISS is always falling.
And that's what's good about the RS-44 and the FO-29. They are way up there.
Yep.
Way up there, over 1,000 miles. So you can get some serious DX all over those things. So basic gear besides the radio. So like I said, if you're either have 2 both, I mean, if you're real basic, but I don't think it's possible. So you have 2 radios, and you can hook one to one antenna and one to the other. And this is actually 2 antennas here, so we've got 70 centimeter and the 2 meter. I actually have a diplexer here, which allows me to connect it to one radio, and it separates the 2 bands and a low pass filter and a high pass filter to separate the two bands. Or you could not have that and just have 2 cables, one connected to the 70 centimeter to one radio, and one connected to the 2 meter for the other radio. It's probably one of the easiest ways to do it, because then you can just have the deep one in your pocket with headphones on, and you don't really have to worry about it unless it's one of the ones you have to change the frequency. If it's 70 centimeter ones, you're going to have to change the frequency. And then you can just have your hand on the 2 meter and be pointing with the antenna. It's still a challenge, but nobody did.
Carl, Bob, did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Okay, you weren't on mute, that's why. Okay. Sorry. Moving on?
Yeah, next page. Can we get rid of those things?
Yeah. I had to see what was going on there. Sorry
Okay,
about
so
that.
the only,
And
the only handheld now that's still dual, full duplex is the Kenwood. And, it's not
you can
cheap.
find one of those, but now they're coming out with the THD7.
Yeah, I heard it's just new,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it isn't out yet, but the price on the THD 74s went even higher.
Yeah.
Because everybody, they quit it right now.
Or the cheap way, the easiest way is probably just do both. But there's also older ones, if you can find one, like this one here is a Yaesu, I think it's up there, 51R, FR51R. That's a full duplex radio. I got that one at a ham best for $100 and works just as fine as the Kenwood. Except you can't buy batteries for it too easily. All right, next page.
I got one of those.
And then for bigger rigs,
Oops, sorry.
that's right. These are all full duplex rigs, so they can listen and talk at the same time. I started with this one, it's in the truck now, the ID 5100. That one's great, but it's only FM. So if you just want to work FM, you can program the memory channels in there and work it just the same. But you could also connect that one up to a computer. It will be computer controlled, which would be a lot easier than the memory channels. I think that's a 9100. That's the full HF, UHF, VHF, ICOM prior to the 9100. So this one's great, but it's got a lot of extra stuff that you don't need. I think they're very expensive. The 9100 and the 97, the 910 and the 9700, spec wise for receive and transmit, are virtually identical. So if you can find one of these buggers, which they're not easy to find, but if you can find one, it's about $1,000 cheaper than one of these. It has all this, it has the preamp feature. It has the sensitivity is great. You can computer control it. I've used this for about a year because these weren't in stock. The only thing you gain with the 9700 is you got the waterfall. And when you're doing the linear birds, you can see yourself coming back, so you don't just have to hear it, and then you can move across the band and find conversations without having to just find them, and then you don't have to remember when you're off band and when you're on band because you can see it, right? That's the really only major advantage of the 9700 and the fact that it's in production now, whereas this one isn't. I actually took mine and tapped into the IF and went to an SDR so I could have the waterfall. And I worked it like that for over a year and it worked great. Okay, next.
Come on. Oops. Oh, okay. You click in.
And more advanced gear, so you got azimuth and elevation rotor that Yaesu and this can be computer controlled too. And then circular polarized antennas that are mounted to this. So everything is all computer controlled and tracking the birds when they come across. And all you have to really worry about is making sure you can hear yourself and find someone to talk to. Next one, Paul. Preamps, that's my own personal one. Antenna and amplifiers makes good ones. I forgot this company's name, but they're decent ones too. And then this here, I used to have software running everything, different softwares on my computer to run the rotor, different ones to run the rig. But this little box here does it all. And it's web driven, so I don't have to worry about an interface, and it's web updated. So I don't have to worry about that. It updates the satellite list all the time, and it was super cheap. And it's just the best thing. And ever since I had that, it's been so much easier.
Which one is it? Like,
This thing here.
oh, yeah, okay. I was gonna circle that on the, oops, sorry. I can't see you can't see you pointing, that's all. That's all right.
There are other ways to do it too. I mean, if you don't want to work it, you could just do it like this. And hold it and just have it pointed. If you know where the bird's gonna go, you could point it to the middle of the pass and then just not worry about the antenna. And then you'll have like maybe 3 or 4 minutes of 20 degrees of talkability, and you don't touch the antenna. It'll work. It'll work. It could be, and could take a lot of the pain out of it, and then it'll probably make you go, oh, this is cool. Well, let's get some cool stuff to make it do it itself. Okay, next page.
Okay,
Oh, and here's just to show the franticness of an FM QCell. Go ahead, play it.
Yeah, the call's November 7, Hotel Quebec Romeo, Charlie November 7-5. Yeah, Delta November 45, good copy that time. November 7, Hotel Quebec Romeo, Charlie November 7.
oops. You know, when I touched the thing,
There was one at the end of it that was kind of interesting.
let me back it up.
There, that guy.
Kilo 0, Fox Yankee, K0FFY, Fox November 86, over. Roger, thanks for Echo November 32, DY2HF.
See, he's got the recorder around his neck, got headphones on. He's got basically that antenna, and he was moving it while he was talking. That's a pretty advanced mobile way of doing it.
Okay.
Yep. And now this is an example of a linear pass.
Shuttle Discovery still on its way to orbit after a successful ascent up through main engine cutoff.
That's a good point to make. You don't have to worry about being, you can hide. You don't have any trees. You can have them close to the ground. But you have trees, you're going to have to walk by them. The northern satellite, you don't have to be up all the time.
It's not music from the satellite, right?
No. There is. Guy. See how he sounds funny? He's off frequency and he's trying to find it.
Delta Lima 1 Foxtrot Yankee, Delta Lima 1 Foxtrot Yankee. Roger, Roger, you are 5 and 8, 5 and 8 in Juliet November, 5-8 Whiskey Golf, Roger.
The other guy is not too on frequency.
the studio, picking sometimes the 5 and 5, going to 5 and 1, 5 and 2. But no problem, I can continue. PSL.
Roger, Roger, the same here, a lot of QSP, and you are going also up and down with the signal, sometimes 5 and 9, you're picking 5 and 9, and my name is Erwin, Echo Romeo Whiskey India November, Roger?
Okay, PSL, Erwin. Yes, I think it's typical on this satellite.
You might not be letting the computer control the Doppler. And that's why it keeps moving the dial, because the guy on the other side, if you're not, you can do that all manually too. Once you get yourself linked in, then you have to follow him too, to make sure that you sound good to him and he sounds good to you.
Roger, Roger, thank you very much for this information. I'm using here an
He's coming back to himself too.
ICOM 9700 with around 10 watts in 5 and 9 element Yagi beam, Roger?
Okay, yes, that's doing a very good job there. And yes, the icon transceiver seems to be very famous, very popular. I hear a lot of people buying and using that. Seems to be a good one also. I'm looking to, yes, have a new version of the ISO. Alright, okay, that's everything. Thanks for coming back. Enjoy the satellite.
Okay.
Next one.
Oops, all right? No,
No, next slide.
oh, wait a minute, I haven't stopped the picture, I haven't stopped the. Come on, oh. Okay. No.
Outside of that.
The new version of the ISO. Alright, okay, that's everything.
It's not moving as
Coming
well.
back, enjoy the satellite. And yes, Oscar November 4 Alpha, bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye.
Roger, Roger, thank you very much for this nice QSO and have fun here on the side.
And just click up on the outside of it.
Oh, yeah,
Down arrow.
Click. Or
I
just
mean,
use
page
it.
down, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Page down wasn't working, I don't know.
Okay, here we are into the appendix. I have a whole bunch of information if you guys, I guess Paul will put this up on the website. If we're gonna
Yeah, the whole thing will
Check
be.
it all out. Keep going. And all the FM birds I put in here, so it's, you don't have to go look it up. Some of them do have a PL tone. SO50 has a PL tone to get it going, but usually somebody else. So it just needs to be activated, and once it goes on, it stays on, and you don't need to do the PL tone. Usually if you hear somebody, somebody's already done it for you. It's rarely you're the first one on. Go ahead. More program and stuff, okay, keep going. And this is showing you what some of the website stuff has. As you get shows you when the acquisition of site, where it will be on the compass, the maximum elevation, the ending, the maximum elevation azimuth, where it'll be at 13 degrees, and then the loss of sight. As you can see, this is only 13 degrees, so it's really up, which might not be a good one to keep. If you're using an omni antenna, it might work well. Whereas this one here, 82 degrees, you're probably going to have a tough time with an omni antenna at a certain point, because it's going to be in the null of that antenna. And you get all this nice cool stuff on the website. Shows you that circle is basically where on Earth the satellite could be heard.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And that's what a pass looks like when you zoom in on it. Okay. I think that's it. You can keep going faster, faster. Okay. I'm going to talk about this real quick. So this is my my first rotor.
You want me to turn the lights on?
Oh, I didn't know they came.
Yeah. You have to use a PL tone if it's a light.
That's good. So I built this rotor here. The bottom is very high rate gear drive. This mounts on the top of the tripod, and then the spool here, which has to be counterweighted to counter effect that, mounts onto here. There's a 9 degree of freedom sensor on here. I don't use all of them. I just use the magnetic direction and the around stuff. And basically, using the G-Predict software, it can send coordinates to this, and using this, it'll track around and work. And it's only small scale, can only do about an antenna like that. And I worked it like that for my deck a couple times, and it was pretty cool. But kind of great, wasn't that great. So I decided I wanted to build a better one, and I went to that same place that I talked about earlier, and this guy had these 2 rotors for $20. These old TV antenna rotors, and I said, well, with the software I made that, I can swap out the DC motors, AC motors, and then I'll put the computer controller in this box, and then I can have something I can leave outside all winter long. That I can't really leave outside. And I wanted to really experiment. And I did it in winter too, so it had to be something tough, because I wanted to make sure I enjoyed this before I put something on the roof and climbed up on the roof and did it. So I made this, and basically I had two sets of relays controlling the left and right and the up and down, and it worked.
Yeah,
And I mounted it on the deck. I had a lot of issues. I had an antenna with the beam, the boom was going through this. And I had workout weights on the other side, that balance. And then there's 3 pounds of lead in this for the back of that. And then I had a base plate, and this stuff's pretty heavy, it'll be good. We had a windstorm, blew it all over on the deck and destroyed my antenna, so I had to rebuild the antenna. And then I kept having issues with the running away, so I'd set it up and go, I'd reset it, I kept running away, but the relays were welding together, right? And it's like, oh, what's wrong with that? So I troubleshot that for a while, which was all fun, because some of them smoked. And I found out that that the relays weren't working too well, so I put triacs in instead of the relays. And then it was working okay, and then I blew up the transformer because end story was there's too much backlash in here. So the sensor was being too sensitive. It kept trying to find it, kept trying to find it, kept trying to find it. And it just repeated everything. It just was good idea, but I was too cheap. I tried to fix it. I drilled the mount where the worm gear was spur gear and tried to mesh it in real good. But because this is like the 60s or something, it was just too worn out, and that's when I got a deal with the commercial ones. But this was it was all in a fun experiment, trying out all the stuff and having a lot of things happening. My wife moaning and groaning at this crazy thing on the deck. That's why I did it in the winter, because it was on the deck in the winter. And then my 3 months of work doing a preamplifier. This is a commercial preamplifier. Not made. I don't think you can buy this particular brand anymore, but there are still some brands out there. And tenor and amplifiers makes good ones. I think that's all I want to share. Does anybody have any questions? You come up and poke around this if you want.
I'm gonna see if there's anything in the chat.
Well, most of this stuff here is not a lot, because these are eBay motors. My last job pays for a lot of this because they bought extra stuff on accident. So it's Arduino parts and stuff like that, and I had tons of electronic stuff all around the house. So this stuff here didn't really cost that much. The biggest thing was the IC 9700. That's an expensive radio. The rotors, the azimuth and elevation rotors, the commercial ones, I didn't buy them new. I got them at the Hamfest. I got 2 sets now. The first set I got, that was $500. But then I got another set, the newer model, that had 2 antennas with it and 240 feet of LMR 600, the computer controller for the azimuth and L blocks. I got that whole setup for $1,000. Then I sold the computer controller for $300 and one of the antennas. So it didn't cost me that much at all. It's a good deal.
There's a question on whose satellite antenna system is in Jamestown. Is that a question for the crowd, I guess?
Must be Bill's.
Probably Bill, no?
Well, it looks like it. Not.
Alan asked. Alan, can you comment on what your question was?
What the address is.
Yeah, I'll wait. Well, make another message in the chat. We'll continue. Go ahead.
There's a place down, and I've been by it when I was working straight next out there. It's an old set of big arrays that they had out there that were
In Jamestown?
it's over on that side. I think it's in Jamestown, or I don't remember where it is. Might be down near Exeter.
What's pretty good was, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. What is all, it was 6 meter antennas. It was all for moon bound stuff.
Any other questions?
So how long do you think you've been doing this? I mean, what do you say is sort of the learning curve that you've gone through to get to this point?
The hardest part was the preamp.
It's still under 2 years, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, I made my first antenna was a helical, quadra-helical antenna to get NOAA satellites, and that was 4 hours a ham. And it has it's like a DNA, you know, and that's kind of, I did that one a while ago, and that worked too.
Did you have one of the NOAA receivers?
No, I did with SDR. I was getting the
I
pictures.
actually have one of the ones that you buy. I upgraded the chip and it will actually do the weather facts.
Oh, did it all by itself?
Yep,
Oh, that's cool.
and all you had to do is have the computer running and it would just wait for a pass, and then it'll, next thing you know, I get home and, oh, you got a nice pass. Get a nice weather satellite view.
I got another comment on this comment. Just outside of the Jamestown dock, there's a massive system. Not a Jamestown, so
More than likely, that's moon bounce Bill.
well, I was thinking Bill myself, but he's not really near the docks, right?
Well, he's outside of the docks, certainly. He's to the north of the Bay Voyager restaurant, which is on the edge of the docks, basically. Well, the downtown beach.
You're further back than that, but it's okay. I mean, Alan, if you really want to know, you could try Bill Corbin and give him better directions, and he might be able to tell you. Maybe that's the way to do it. Bill Corbin's trying to answer the question for you, Alan. Okay.
Things that really struck me when I was asking you what really drove you to this was that you thought that SSB at the or just during right in my contact was kind of boring, and you thought that there were so many moving parts here, so many things could go wrong, and that's what you really loved about it. You know, it's the fact that when everything comes together, all these moving parts, it really
Once you do all this, and then
it works,
you make a
right?
picture, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Answer, I can.
That's really cool. All this stuff worked. You know, I looked at myself, what it worked, I talked to somebody, that's pretty neat. I got these antennas going all over the place, and my wife's crabbing and everything's working.
Yeah, Bill? Bill had something to say.
Recently heard 2 guys talking, 2 EMA guys, but this is similar. And they're talking about how hard it is and difficult, all the moving parts, and how many months and years it takes to get it to work and how hard it is. And the other guy said, if we wanted it easy, we'd use the cell phone. That sums it up.
Yeah,
It's the journey, not the,
yeah, it's a journey, not the,
use the cell phone, just want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other things besides voice too. You can, on the linear birds, you can do FT4, which is kind of cool because you can watch your little fan thing go crooked like this because everything's moving. And then when you're, I've made a few of those, but there's not too many people on, so I'm kind of maxed out. I look once in a while for somebody new, but I haven't seen one in a while. And you can on the ISS and I think Lilac, there's an APRS beacon up there, not a beacon, there's an APRS digitmeter. So you can actually talk to people, make a QSO-ish thing via APRS and we were a digitmeter, which is kind of cool too. So that was another thing, I gave that a try and made a few of those through the ISS. And it was cool, but got boring. Yeah, there's all kinds of neat things you can do. You can download images from the ISS. So they post images and then if you go on the ISS site, they have a schedule of when things are gonna, they only have they have a lot of radios on them, but some of them are used for specific purposes. The ones I use for ham stuff, they'll put up a schedule like, I think the APRS one is also the SSTV, is that it? Slow scan
TV, yeah.
I think that's the same radio. So when it's not doing APRS and like at certain times, they'll for certain events or something, they'll put it into SSTV mode, and you can download images from the usually of the astronauts doing stuff up in space.
Well, another good thing to use the antennas for is for media scatter.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
I have.
That'll be after I do some E&E
I've
first.
done it on 2 meters, 220, 450. It's
I-
fun when you get meteors out there. There's all kinds of them.
if you want to get a little hooked up on this stuff, don't try all the fancy stuff. Just go out with an antenna, point it at the sky and practice where there's something in the sky.
Yeah, that's what.
So practice that first. Where is there a satellite? Is it there? And then just point an antenna at it. Your Bayfang will probably work because I've seen that happen.
I made one and I said, I'm gonna try to hear a satellite and made this antenna, make it out of maple, it's gonna be beautiful. And I was like, yeah, this is a great antenna. And it worked. And I got up there, I was like, oh, geez, this thing is heavy. That's why I figured them on alone. But it's what I had, right? And it worked great. And I was like, hey, I just heard somebody. And I said, oh, yeah, we can do better. And they just kept building and building and building. And then that's how I got where I'm at now.
Do you want people to come up and look at your stuff?
If you want to take a look.
Thanks so much, Carl. This is great.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording.